One thing that you do have a great story, representing Team GB. Now, not too many people can say that in the world of motocross, really, because let's be honest, there's only 3 riders every year. And you did that, and you did that in a very unique way, because
there was a story there.
That came about. That's still an amazing story, because like you grasped the opportunity.
Almost unbelievable. Almost like unless it was real, you'd be like,
so tell us how it all happened. When you got the phone call to right up to the event.
The background to this then is that for some reason the ACU, the UK governing body, had scheduled a 125 and 250 national championship on the same day as the Motocross of Nations. And this was flagged a year before, but they didn't change the date. So when it came time to picking the team for the Motocross of Nations, we needed a 125, a 250 and a 500 rider. Well, anybody that was any good on a 125 and 250 were going to be racing the British Championship, because they were contracted to the UK importers, and the UK importers said that's more important to us. You should have changed the date. And so the 500 class was fine because we got Thorpe, but they didn't have a 125 and a 250 rider. Kurt Nicoll volunteered to step down from 500s to a 250. So he was a 250 guy, but we had no 125 rider. And this was going on for weeks and weeks in the press. And then as far as like 10 days before, it looked like we weren't going to send a team, because they didn't have a 125 rider.
Gaildorf in Germany, right?
Gaildorf in Germany.
Yeah.
Now, to refresh people's memory, I was a 500 guy at this point. I debuted in the 500s that year, and I'd only scored... I started on a Mako, but I'd kind of got picked up by Kawasaki towards the end of the season, and I'd started scoring a few 500 GP points. So I was the 39th ranked rider in the 500 GPs that year. Hadn't ridden a 125 for years. But Britain weren't going to be sending a team because they didn't have a 125. I must have said to somebody, I've no idea who or when, but I must have said, for Christ's sake, I'd ride the 125. Didn't say it to anybody in authority. Next thing I know, I get a call from Albert Carter, the team manager, and he said, Rob, somebody told me you'd ride the 125. And I said, well, yeah, of course. And he said, okay, you're on the team. So that was it, just like that.
We had Mark Chamberlain in for the very first episode of these. I don't think he had such the same issues as getting a rider so quickly.
I put my phone down and like, wow, I'm riding the Motocross of Nations on a 125, which I didn't have.
Didn't have 125.
So I'd just been picked up with Kawasaki. So I rang up Alec Wright the next day to tell him the good news and said, can I get a 125? And he said, no, Ace, you can't get a 125 for 2 reasons. One, we haven't got any. Although he could have probably found one from somewhere.
I'm sure he could have found one.
But secondly, and this was the main reason, because the UK importers were in dispute with the ACU over this change of date, he couldn't break his solidarity with his fellow supporters to support somebody going to the Motocross of Nations because they'd been at loggerheads. So he said, I can't help you. So I was on the team, didn't have a bike. So I thought, what am I going to do? And I figured out that I'd just started to come good, if you can call it that, on a 500. But for me to ever get to race the Nations on a 500 in the future would mean me having to outperform Dave Thorpe and outperform Kurt Nicoll, both of whom were just coming into the best years of their career. And that seemed quite a tall order for a bloke with 6 GP points to his name. So I thought, this is probably the only chance I'm ever going to get to ride the nation. So I thought, I will buy my own bike. So we tried all the various dealers.
Alex already said there's none in stock.
Alex already said that all the, this is like September.
Yeah, they're all sold out.
This was 10 days before the Nations. It's September.
10 days?
Yeah. This was 10 days before the Nations.
What? Sorry, you got the call from Albert?
I got the call from Albert like 10 days before. So,
yeah.
Alec
and you're like contracted to Kawasaki, so you have to ride a Kawasaki.
Have to ride a Kawasaki.
The 96 KS25, not the fastest thing in the world.
Didn't matter. They didn't have any new bikes. They weren't in the country yet, and all the old bikes had sold out. So we couldn't find a bike from anywhere. So the next step down the ladder was to look at a second-hand one. So we found a second-hand one in Trials of Motocross News Classifieds. And I went and bought that. I can't remember how much it was, probably 1,400 quid, something like that. And so I sent my mechanic, Ken Bulff, to buy it, because I thought that if he knew it was for, a desperate man, he might want to charge more for it. So So Ken went along to buy this bike. He lied and told them it was for his son, who was just started out in racing. And the guy who was selling it said it was his son's and he was retiring. And so he bought this second-hand bike. And that was it. And it was completely stock. And I rode it once down at Camberley beforehand. We had no parts for it. We had no spares whatsoever.
You think Alec could have helped you out with at least that?
No, we had nothing. I'm not sure if we even had 125 size tyres for it. So I rode it once down at Camberley just to check that it worked, and then Ken started getting it ready for Gaildorf. The next weekend, so this was a few days later, we had the British Championship round at Newbury. There I was announced to the press as the third member of the team, and then the Nations was the weekend after that. So Ken left for Germany on the Tuesday, I think. And so I turned up and I raced the Nations for Great Britain on a completely bone stock second-hand 125.
Oh, isn't that the year Kurt got hurt?
Kurt was our 250 rider. Kurt crashed in practice and broke his leg. So just imagine this from my perspective for a second. Just go back. So I'm like a guy that's just, debuted in GPs. I've just managed to score a handful of points. And all of a sudden, I'm Dave Thorpe and Kurt Nicoll's teammate at the Nations. And we're going up against Ron Lachine and David Bailey and Jeff Ward and Davy Strybos and Pekka Vekkanen, all on Works Kajivas. And I'm in the 125 class. And Lachine's on an RC 125. And all of those other guys are on factory Kajiva 125s.
Yeah. Which were rapid.
Really fast.
And I got a picture of me sat next to David Bailey on the start line. And David Bailey's there on his RC 500. I'm the bloke next to him. This bloke from Worcester on a 125 that he's bought out the paper. And his bike is worth, tens of thousands of pounds. And my bike's worth 1,400 quid. And his exhaust pipe, those factory Hondas had Inconel exhaust pipes. And his exhaust pipe was worth more than my entire bike. And I'm sat on the start line next to him.
You weren't tempted to sort of tap and say, "I've got a hell of a deal on this."
I mean, I know David these days. I play golf with David, and so he's seen that picture, and he thinks it's staggering that I was there on that bike.
Was that a pinch yourself moment when you was on that start line at all? It must have been like,
what am I doing here?
It's got to be a key moment in your career, though.
I thought going there, I'm only there for backup. I mean, I was so chuffed to be there, to get the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed to enjoy this weekend because I wasn't going to get another chance. So it was unlikely I was going to get another chance on a 500 because of Thorpe and Nicoll. So I really tried to enjoy the weekend. And so I was thrilled to be there. I thought I'm only there for backup because Kurt was on it, Thorpe was on it. And it was... I don't know whether it was...
Kurt was on it.
It was 4 results out of 6. So in theory, they didn't need either of my 2 results. It was the first year they changed it to the 3-class thing. So I think it was best 4 out of 6 results. But then Kurt went and broke his leg on Saturday. So it's down to David and I. So all of a sudden, my results are going to count. And I was on a shitty bike, stock bike, and I was up against those other bikes. But it just inspired me.
I was going to say, at that point, you obviously felt bad about Kurt and you had concerns for Kurt.
Yes.
But
he was in hospital, wasn't he? He wasn't in a bad way.
Oh, no, he broke his femur. We went to, David and I went to see him in the hospital and it was really sad because, he was our friend and he was our teammate and nobody likes to see anything like that to happen to anybody.
So, but you put that to the back of your mind and you were just saying, so that did inspire you. You didn't feel extra pressure.
I didn't feel any pressure whatsoever.
No.
Oddly. Maybe because of the bike I was on.
Subconsciously, maybe do you think because Kurt had gone out that it's kind of like you realise it's unrealistic with you on a 125 and missing Kurt that you're gonna get.
I can see where you're coming from with that thought process.
Did that enter your mind?
No, I don't think that did enter my mind. I just thought I'm
there to do the best you can.
I'm going to, my bike's not as good as the other 125s, let alone the 250s and the 500s.
It might not have been as good as the guy racing AMCA, but
no.
But I'm going to ride my arse off on this bike. I'm going to give it everything that I've got, and it was one of the best rides of my career. I went on to do things in 500 GPs, but in terms of the performance on the bike I was on, that was my best race, I think.
Do you think it might have been a little bit of an impetus, a springboard to really get your 500 career going? Maybe coming off the back.
Well, you didn't think about dropping down to 125s or 250s at that point. It was always about 500s.
I didn't know how to ride the thing. No. I hadn't ridden a bike 125 in years. I was off a 500, so I was in the wrong gear all the time. We had practice on Saturday, so I did a couple of practice sessions, hour-long practice sessions. I was still in the wrong gear. And then in the first race, I had a Kurt Mayer, German or Austrian guy, crashed into me, and we crashed, and my handlebars dropped somehow. So I had to pull into the pits. So that put me right back. But I just got better through the day. And I think in the second race, I can't remember the specific result. I'd have to look it up in my book. But in the last race, I finished 15th. Bearing in mind, all three bikes are on the same track at the same time. So I was 15th overall, and I was 6.125. So in front of me, the guys that beat me were Ron Lachine on his factory Honda. The first three in the 125 World Championship, which was Corrado Maddi, Strybos and Vekkanen. Then Didi Lacquer. That was it. So I was sixth.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Lacquer, obviously.
And I beat, a ton of 500s and a ton of 250s. And like good guys, you know, back then. Like, Kurt Ljungqvist and maybe Jackie Vimond and people like that. And I'm on this 125. And it just, that bike just inspired me to ride it faster and faster and faster.
Had you ridden Gaildorf at that point?
No, first time.
So it was your first time there as well?
First time.
So you really bonded with the track straight away?
I like the track. Don't know why.
But you prefer sand over hardpack?
It's like we said though about,
No, you don't.
No.
Maybe, like you say with the start gate, if the start gate's not going down, the guy will get the whole shot. Your mind's in a different place. You're just out there to do the best you can.
Never going to get a start. If you watch the video of me and Bailey, Bailey's like gone on his 500 and I'm like bogging off the gate and, I'm like 50 yards behind him before we get to the first corner.
Go through. There's Britain's Rob Andrews looking at the start gate as they prepare for the start. Down it goes, and the whole field cleanly away, putting on the power. It's so important, that first corner, and into the first turn. It's David Thorpe in second place. Kees van der Ven is third, and Rob Andrews 3/4 of the way back. And there's.
But it was a bit like Western Beach Race. Just bikes everywhere. I don't know where I am. I'm just going to ride my arse off. I'm going to go as fast as I can. And that's a 250. Oh, just past a 250. Brilliant. And I'm catching up a 500. I, just kept passing and passing and passing and passing. But they scored it in classes. So me passing a 500 or a 250 didn't earn me any more points. It was the other 125s. And so I would hear a 125 in the distance and go, wow, I'll try and catch him up. And so on the last lap and a half, I overtook two other 125s, overtaking a guy in the very last corner, Carl Salzer, I think it was, to gain 1 point, which actually meant that Britain came fifth overall with two riders.
I can tell, just you talking about it, you're talking about it with great affection and memories. It's all coming out, flooding back to you.
Yeah, it's something like I'm very, very proud of.
Probably your greatest race.
Yeah, I think
because of the magnitude of what it was and the situation, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm very proud of the fact not many people get a chance to race for their country, or not many sportsmen get a chance to actually perform for their country. And on one hand, I got it by a fluke. I wasn't their best choice, their first choice. I got it because of kind of red tape and politics, but I justified my selection in the end with that performance.